40 acres, $100,000 worth of premium wheat. Should have been harvested in just 2 days. Instead, it stood before me as nothing but black ash, smoke drifting through the air like ghosts of the crop I'd spent a year growing. The field looked like a battle zone, twisted metal and charred soil stretching to the horizon. Then I heard her. "This mess is your fault," Karen screamed from across the fence, pointing at the smoldering ruins. "I warned you not to grow that ugly field next to our community." Ash swirled around her polished shoes as she yelled again. "You should be thanking me for cleaning it up." In that moment, I knew this wasn't an accident. This was sabotage. My name is David Robinson, and for most of my adult life, I have lived in the quiet tension between two worlds, the courtroom and the farmland. In town, people call me Judge Robinson, but out here, beyond the county road, past the long line of rustling cottonwoods, I'm just David, the man with 40 acres of wheat he treats like family. I grew up on this land. My father taught me how wheat should sound when the wind runs through it. Soft, full, alive. My mother taught me to judge people with my eyes before my gavel. I carried both lessons into adulthood, and they shaped everything that came after. My work, my patience, my understanding of people, and the one thing I never expected to face: someone burning my field to settle a homeowners association complaint. 2 days before harvest, my wheat was perfect. Heavy heads, long stalks bending toward the soil in disciplined rows. That morning, I was supposed to inspect moisture levels and check the combine tires. Instead, I stepped out of my truck and saw a column of smoke twisting upward like a dark omen. For a second, I didn't believe what I was seeing. Fields don't just burn themselves. Not in calm weather, not at dawn, not with a full irrigation system behind them. But then the wind shifted, bringing heat and the unmistakable smell of roasted grain. I broke into a run. When I reached the ridge overlooking my farm, the world I knew was gone. Flames crawled across my land like a red tide. Fire trucks crowded my property line, engines rumbling. Firefighters shouted orders over the roar, hoses arcing across blackened soil. Everywhere I looked there was chaos. Smoke rising from what used to be golden waves of wheat, twisted metal irrigation pipes sticking out like broken bones, birds fleeing overhead in frantic spirals. But none of that caused my heart to drop. What stopped me cold was her. Karen Hollingsworth, HOA president, perpetual storm cloud, self-declared enforcer of every imaginary code violation, stood in the middle of the mess with a garden hose, like she was heroically defending the neighborhood. Shoulder-length blonde hair swinging in the wind, lips tight with superiority. She turned the moment she heard my boots hit the gravel. And then she shouted across the burning field, "David, I warned you. That overgrown wheat was a fire hazard. Move back." I stared at her, not at the fire, not at the destruction. At her, the woman who once fined me for excessively rural aesthetics. The woman who measured my mailbox height with a tape measure. The woman who believed the HOA's authority extended everywhere, even onto land she didn't own. I walked toward the fire chief, my boots sinking into soft ash. "Tell me this wasn't intentional," I said. He looked at me with that delicate expression firefighters use when they don't want to tell you the truth. "Well, the initial ignition point appears to be along your east fence line." Said someone was trying to clear dry brush. I felt my jaw tighten. My east fence line had no brush. It only had wheat. And standing a few feet from that very fence, still holding her ridiculous garden hose, was Karen, arguing with an engineer from the fire investigation team. "No, I did the right thing," she yelled at him. "I saw smoke and I acted quickly. Don't question me. This field was hazardous." The engineer ignored her. That alone should have told her the truth. People weren't buying her story. I stepped forward. "Karen, what did you do?" She spun toward me and jabbed a finger into the air like she was pointing at a criminal. "Don't use that tone with me, David. Your wheat was a violation of section." "There is no section," I said quietly. She blinked. "There is no HOA jurisdiction on my farmland, Karen." The color drained from her face, just for a heartbeat, before she squared her shoulders again. "You'll hear from the board," she snapped. I almost laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh, because she didn't know what I did. She didn't know what was coming. Within a week, she'd walk into a courtroom as a defendant, and I'd be the one waiting for her. By the next morning, the fire was officially out, but the damage wasn't. The land smelled of wet ash and chemical foam, and every step I took kicked up little puffs of gray dust that floated in the air like ghostly reminders of what used to be wheat. 40 acres. Gone. 2 days before harvest. $100,000 evaporated into smoke. But it wasn't the money that twisted a knot inside my chest. It was the insult, the arrogance, the absolute certainty that somehow, in Karen Hollingsworth's mind, my land and my livelihood was nothing more than a canvas for her authority fantasies. When I pulled up to the field for the follow-up investigation, Karen was already there. Of course she was. She stood next to 2 HOA board members, arms folded, chin lifted like she was attending a parade thrown in her honor. Her shoulder-length blonde hair was curled at the ends today, like she'd actually gotten ready for this confrontation. I wasn't sure if that made it better or worse. She spotted me the moment I stepped out of my truck. "Oh, look who finally decided to show up," she said loudly enough for the investigators to hear. "The man who ignored 3 HOA warnings." I closed the truck door calmly. "I don't fall under your HOA jurisdiction, Karen. It's community jurisdiction," she snapped back. "And your crop," she gestured at the scorched earth as if it personally offended her, "was a hazard to property values." I had to take a breath, a long one, because if I didn't, I might have said something I couldn't take back. The lead fire investigator, a tall, quiet man named Ruiz, walked up to me with a clipboard. "Morning, Judge Robinson. Call me David," I said. "We're standing in a cemetery." He nodded sympathetically and motioned toward the charred east fence line where the burn originated. "We've confirmed ignition started right along here," he said. "Accelerant traces are present." Karen's head snapped around. "Excuse me? Accelerant? That's ridiculous. I saw smoke and acted quickly." "You acted," I cut in. "But not quickly enough. And not legally." She took a hard step toward me, jabbing a finger into my chest this time. "You don't get to lecture me, David Robinson. You let your field grow too thick, you refused to trim it, you created a threat to the entire neighborhood." I was protecting lives. I leaned in just slightly. "Then why did witnesses see you out here the night before the fire? Carrying a gas can?" She froze. The HOA board members turned toward her slowly. "What?" one whispered. "That's a lie," she sputtered. "A complete fabrication. I was gardening. My roses." "Your roses are on the opposite side of your house," I said. 3 people saw you near my fence line. At 9:30 p.m. Her face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again, like her brain couldn't decide which emotion to settle on. "You're crazy," she said. "You're making things up because your precious little crop got ruined." I stepped back. "I'm a judge, Karen. I don't make things up. I build cases." The investigator cleared his throat. "We'll be checking security cameras along the street, HOA provided or otherwise." At that moment, Karen's composure cracked. For just a brief second, her jaw twitched. Her eyes darted toward the HOA office building across the road. And I knew something was on those cameras. She scrambled to redirect. "This whole thing is being blown out of proportion," she said quickly. "In fact, the HOA board has decided that David should be held responsible for failing to maintain safe agricultural conditions adjacent to residential zones." The 2 board members nodded, not confidently, not proudly, but fearfully, like she had coerced them into agreement long before they arrived. I turned to them. "Gentlemen, you understand that this land is zoned for agriculture, correct?" Silence. "And you understand that an HOA cannot impose residential codes on county farmland?" Silence again. Karen stepped in front of them, blocking my view. "Don't answer him. He's manipulating the situation." "I'm quoting the law," I said. She actually snapped. "Oh, shut up about the law, David. This town isn't your courtroom." There it was, the mask slipping, the truth bleeding through. Karen didn't hate my wheat. Karen hated my authority. Karen hated anything she couldn't control. Investigators worked around us, taking photos, measuring burn patterns, collecting samples. The morning sun climbed higher, lighting the scorched land in harsh detail. Broken irrigation lines, collapsed fence posts, melted soil, ash that rubbed off onto my boots like soot from a funeral pyre. I watched Karen. Karen watched me. And in that moment, I realized something. She still believed she could win. She still believed she could bully her way out of this. She still believed the HOA's imaginary power was stronger than the law. But she didn't know what I already knew. The fire wasn't an accident. The evidence wasn't in her favor. And soon, very soon, she wasn't going to be yelling in a field. She was going to be yelling in a courtroom. My courtroom. By Monday morning, the sky still carried a faint smell of burned wheat. Even after washing my clothes 3 times, the scent clung to everything I owned, like the fire was refusing to let me move on. But I didn't need to move on. Not yet, because something told me the real blaze wasn't in my field. It was about to erupt at the HOA office. I drove into town early, long before the board's scheduled emergency meeting. The HOA building sat just at the edge of the neighborhood, a ridiculous 2-story structure with oversized windows and a sign polished so aggressively it practically glared at newcomers. I walked inside, greeted by the artificial smell of citrus cleaner and the faint hum of servers behind the reception wall. The receptionist, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, froze when he saw me. "Judge Robinson, sir. We weren't expecting you this early." "That's good," I said calmly. "I'm not here for a meeting. I'm here for footage." He swallowed visibly. Footage? Security footage," I clarified. "Street-facing cameras. HOA owned. Publicly registered. I need access to the recordings from 2 nights ago." His fingers twitched. I'm not authorized." "Then call someone who is." Behind me, the glass doors burst open. "I swear to God, you people are useless." Karen's voice ricocheted through the lobby like a thrown brick. She stormed in, shoulder-length blonde hair bouncing with every furious step, clutching a stack of folders to her chest. The receptionist practically folded in on himself. I turned slowly. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "Gathering evidence," I replied. "Well, you can stop. We had a break-in." "Yes, a break-in. And someone tampered with our cameras." I raised an eyebrow. Convenient timing. Her nostrils flared. "Don't start with me, David." I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint gray smudge of ash she still hadn't washed off her shoes. "Karen," I said softly, "you can shout at me all day, but you can't shout at digital recordings." She scoffed. "Recordings that conveniently don't exist anymore." The receptionist coughed nervously. "The system, didn't show signs of a breach. Logs are normal. Files are intact." Karen whipped around so fast her hair snapped like a whip. "What?" He flinched. I'm sorry, Ms. Hollingsworth, but nobody accessed the system without authorization. The files from the night in question are still there." Her jaw dropped. Then came the panic. "I want them deleted," she hissed. I stepped between her and the desk. "No one is deleting anything." She pushed against me, pointing a finger upward, inches from my face. "You don't run this community, David." "No," I said, "but I do run my courtroom. And if you tamper with evidence, you're not just facing civil damages anymore." Her hand froze mid-air. Something shifted behind her eyes. Fear, calculation, maybe even regret, though not much. "Fine," she said, lowering her hand. "Let's watch the footage. I have nothing to hide." But the tremor in her voice said otherwise. The receptionist led us to a small side room used for board reviews. Inside, a monitor glowed softly on the long wooden table. He clicked through the directories and opened the file marked SAM 04_eastbound_9 p.m., 12 a.m. The video started. The neighborhood street was dark, quiet. A few porch lights flickered. A dog wandered by. A truck passed. Then, at 9:28 p.m., a figure appeared. A woman, shoulder-length blonde hair, carrying a red gas can. Karen's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. That's not. The figure moved toward my east fence line, set the can down, removed the cap, looked around, and then, a small flash, a spark, a trail of fire blooming outward. Karen screamed, "Turn it off! Turn it off right now!" That's not me, but it was her. Every feature, every movement, even her clothing matched what neighbors described. The receptionist froze, terrified. I kept my eyes on the screen, watching my field ignite in grainy night vision brightness. Karen grabbed the monitor and shook it. "Stop it. Stop showing that. Let go of the equipment," I said sharply. She shoved it away, stumbling backward, breathing hard, eyes wild with disbelief, like she had just witnessed her own ghost committing a crime she desperately wished she hadn't. "David, please." Her voice cracked, the first time I had ever heard it falter. I didn't think, it wasn't supposed to." "It wasn't supposed to what?" I asked. She collapsed into a chair, hands trembling. "I only wanted to scare you," she whispered. I inhaled slowly. Karen, you burned 40 acres. She buried her face in her palms. And somewhere deep inside her collapsing world, she finally understood. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was a criminal act. And the law wasn't on her side. The moment the footage ended, the room became painfully silent. The kind of silence that presses down on your ribs like a weight. Karen sat motionless, shoulders curled inward, her blonde hair falling across her face like a curtain drawn over a ruined performance. The receptionist stood rigid near the door, looking like he wanted to evaporate. I stayed standing, because the truth hits differently when you're still on your feet. I finally broke the silence. We need to notify the fire department's investigation unit. They'll want to secure this video. Karen's head snapped up. You can't. Her voice was hoarse, raw at the edges. David, please, I can fix this. We can fix this. There is no we, I said quietly. She dragged her fingers across her cheeks, smearing what was either leftover ash or new tears. You don't understand what happens if this gets out, she whispered. The board, the entire community, my position, my reputation. Your reputation burned down with my wheat, I said. 40 acres, Karen. My retirement plan. A year of work gone in minutes. She flinched like I'd struck her. Look, I just wanted you to remove that fence. You were violating HOA layout protocols and ignoring formal notices. She burst out. You're a judge. You should follow rules. I stared at her. My fence didn't violate a single regulation, I said. Your board just didn't like that. It wasn't one of your approved styles. She swallowed, eyes darting away. Rules aren't supposed to be weapons, I added. Something cracked inside her. A tiny visible break. She whispered, I know. Before I could respond, the main office door flew open and 3 HOA board members hurried inside. Faces flushed, disordered, like they'd been dragged from an argument. Karen, what is going on? One demanded. We heard shouting. Then they saw the frozen frame on the monitor, the blonde figure with the gas can, and all of them stopped dead. One of them, a thin man with silver glasses, spoke first. Is that? Karen shot up from her chair. No, it's not. It's doctored or glitched or something's wrong. The woman beside him folded her arms. Karen, that is exactly your hairstyle, your coat, your shoes. You think I burned down a judge's property? Karen screeched. Are you insane? The woman's eyes flicked to me. Is that why you're here, Mr. Robinson? Yes, I said simply. And I'm calling the fire investigators. Panic rippled through the room. Wait, the man with the glasses said, stepping forward. Let's all take a breath. This affects the entire HOA. If our board president is involved in... Don't say it, Karen hissed, jabbing a finger at him. Don't you dare say it. Arson, he finished anyway. Karen's face twisted with fury. You traitor. No, he said calmly. I'm a treasurer, and my job is to protect this community. The board exchanged grim looks. No one stood with her. For the first time since I'd known Karen Hollingsworth, she truly looked alone. I felt the shift in the air, like the entire room exhaled at once. Like her authority had been sucked out of her lungs and scattered in the dust. I pulled out my phone. She lunged. Don't, please. The treasurer grabbed her arms and held her back. Karen thrashed wildly, her blonde hair whipping like a storm caught indoors. I didn't mean to burn anything, she screamed. It was just supposed to be a warning. I didn't think it would spread. I didn't. Her voice dissolved into sobs. Even the receptionist turned his head away. I looked at her, a woman who had spent years wielding a clipboard like a sword, enforcing rules with the ferocity of a monarch guarding her crown. And now she was a fallen sovereign, undone by her own spark. I said quietly, Karen, the fire didn't destroy my faith in this community. This did. Her crying paused just for a second. That was the moment she understood the real cost. Not the legal consequences. Not the board seat. Not the fines or the charges. It was the loss of control. The collapse of the illusion she had built around herself. I pressed the call button. Fire Department Investigative Unit, a voice answered. I took one last look at Karen. This is Judge David Robinson, I said. I have evidence of intentional ignition in the Hollingsworth fire case. Karen let out a broken, animalistic sound, and the board watched the fall of their queen. The fire investigators arrived faster than I expected. 2 trucks, 7 officers, and a wave of cold authority swept into the HOA building like a winter front breaking through stale summer air. The boardroom emptied instantly. Board members scattering like startled pigeons, the receptionist pretending to file imaginary paperwork, and Karen sat alone in the same chair, staring down at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. I stood beside the window, watching the investigators carry evidence bags and equipment down the hallway. My wheat field had burned only 2 days ago, but the smell, the phantom scent of scorched earth, seemed to follow me like a ghost. It clung to my clothes, my hair, my breath, my memory. An investigator stepped inside. "Judge Robinson?" "Yes," I said. "We'll need a statement, and we'll need the original file from the HOA's surveillance system." Karen let out a choking noise. "You can't just walk in and take things," she snapped. "This is private HOA property." The lead investigator raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this is a felony investigation. You don't get to deny evidence." I watched her shrink, her bravado collapsing under legal reality. They directed me into the adjoining office for recording the full statement. When I sat down, the weight of everything finally pressed onto my shoulders. For 2 days, I had been running on anger and responsibility, but now, the exhaustion kicked in like a slow exhale. I told them everything. The smoke, the flames, the night the wheat field died, the footage, Karen's reaction, the board's meltdown. When the interview ended, the lead investigator paused before turning off the recorder. "Judge Robinson, do you want to press full charges?" The question landed like a stone. I looked through the glass into the boardroom. Karen was still there, shoulders trembling, hands gripping her knees like she was trying to keep herself from flying apart. She had done something unspeakably reckless, irreversibly damaging, criminal, but I had also witnessed something I hadn't expected. Fear. Not the fear of consequences, but the fear of being exposed as fragile. Still, justice didn't care about fragility. "Yes," I said. "Every charge that applies." The investigator nodded sharply. "Understood." When I stepped back into the boardroom, Karen rose so quickly the chair scraped the floor. David, please listen to me." "No," I said gently but firmly. "Not now. But I can explain. It was just a signal. Just a gesture to get your attention. You burned 40 acres of wheat." "I didn't mean." She stopped. Her voice wavered. Her eyes darted around as though searching for a reason that didn't exist. "I didn't mean for the whole thing to go up," she whispered. "The wind, the dryness, I thought it would scorch a small patch. Something you couldn't ignore. It was a harvest-ready field," I said. "1 spark is a death sentence." She covered her mouth with her trembling hand. Tears pooled again. "I made a mistake," she said. "A terrible mistake." I stared at her, searching her face for anything. Remorse, understanding, acknowledgement. But all I saw was panic masquerading as regret. Then the board members re-entered, 3 of them grouped together like a jury. "Karen," the treasurer said, "we held an emergency vote." Her head jerked up. "You are hereby removed from your position as HOA president." She looked like she'd been punched. "You can't fire me," she barked. "I am this HOA. "Not anymore," the woman beside him said coldly. "You just endangered 24 houses, an entire street, and 1 man's livelihood." Karen turned toward me as if I were the one who had betrayed her. "This is your fault," she whispered. "You ruined me." "No," I said. "You lit the match." Before she could answer, 2 fire investigators approached. "Karen Hollingsworth?" one asked. Her breathing hitched. "You are being taken in for questioning." They didn't cuff her yet, but they flanked her on either side. Karen moved stiffly, like a broken marionette pulled by invisible strings. Her hair was messy, her voice small, her arrogance stripped away with frightening speed. As they escorted her out, she twisted around and looked at me. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with something much worse. Shock. How did this happen? Shock. How did I end up here? Shock. For the first time, Karen Hollingsworth looked human. And I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just the hollow quiet after a fire burns everything it can. When the door closed behind her, the treasurer let out a long, shaking sigh. "Judge Robinson," he said, "on behalf of the HOA, we're sorry." I nodded once. "But apologies don't regrow wheat." They don't erase flames. And they don't rebuild trust. Nothing about this was over. Not even close. The morning after Karen was escorted out of the HOA building, I woke with a strange tightness in my chest. Not pain, not anxiety. Something closer to anticipation. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I brewed coffee and stepped outside onto my porch. The air still smelled faintly of smoke, even though the winds had shifted overnight. 40 acres of ash didn't fade in a day. Or a week. Or a season. I stared at the blackened earth stretching to the horizon. It looked like a scar carved straight through the county, raw, dark, unforgettable. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I answered. Robinson. Judge Robinson. This is Deputy Keller from the County Sheriff's Office. We need you to come in. Something's come up. The hesitation in his voice wasn't normal. Not from him. What happened? It's regarding the fire investigation. And Karen Hollingsworth. For a moment, the entire porch felt colder. I'll be there in 20. The sheriff's office was buzzing when I entered. Detectives clustered in a semicircle, voices low, papers scattered, a monitor glowing with satellite images and fire spread projections. Deputy Keller met me at the door. Judge, follow me. He guided me into a briefing room. Inside, the lead fire investigator from earlier, Larson, stood with his arms crossed over a table of photographs. And across from him, my breath snagged. Karen. Not in handcuffs. Not distraught. Not broken. Calm. Collected. Back straight. Hands folded. Eyes steady. Almost confident. She didn't even look at me. That wasn't like her. What's going on? I asked. Larson gestured toward the table. We've discovered something new. He laid out an enlarged aerial photo of my wheat field, taken the night of the fire. The satellite timestamp was 11 minutes before the flames appeared on anyone's cameras. That right there, Larson said, tapping the image, is a heat signature. I leaned closer. It wasn't near Karen's garden. It wasn't near her roses. It wasn't anywhere she had been. It was at the back end of my field, near the county service road, a place almost no one ever went. What are you suggesting? I asked slowly. Larson looked at me with measured caution. That there may have been 2 ignition points. My pulse spiked. No, I said. Karen lit the fire. I saw. You saw a flare of flame, Larson corrected gently. But from this new data, that may not have been the first one. Or the strongest. I felt the world tilt, shift, waver. Karen finally lifted her head. There, she whispered, pointing at the satellite image. That was already burning before I even stepped outside. Her voice wasn't smug, not defensive, not manipulative, just certain. Larson handed me another piece of evidence. A scorched metal fragment found deep in the western corner of the field. The investigator's tone darkened. This wasn't from any garden tool. It's from industrial equipment. I stared at it. I don't have industrial equipment. We know, he said. Karen clasped her hands together. A tremble worked through her voice. Fear mixed with something like vindication. I didn't burn your field, David. My stomach tightened. Then why did you act guilty? Why did you panic? Why did you? Because I lit the roses, she admitted sharply. I tried to scorch the edges of your field. Yes, I did that. And it was stupid. But I didn't destroy 40 acres. And I didn't start that main fire. The room fell silent. Larson spoke next. We now have reason to believe the fire might have been intentional. But not by her. What are you saying? I asked. He tapped the metal fragment again. This piece matches equipment used by a specific construction contractor. Someone who submitted a zoning application for your land 6 months ago. I froze. My land. My field. My livelihood. Zoned by someone else? Karen swallowed. David, I tried to strong-arm you. But I'm not the one trying to take your property. The room seemed colder, sharpened, like danger had walked through the door. Larson met my eyes. Judge Robinson, we believe someone wanted that field burned so it could be reclassified and sold. And they may have used your feud with the HOA as cover. My voice came out as a whisper. Who? Larson pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table. Your neighbor. The one who owns the tractor depot. My blood pressure spiked. Him. The man who always asked when I'd sell. The man who tried to buy the land twice. The man who joked about faster ways to clear fields. Karen looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time with no hostility, no arrogance. Just dread. David, we both got played. The fire hadn't been an accident. It hadn't been pure HOA madness. This was bigger, darker, deliberate. And suddenly, Karen wasn't the villain. She was my only witness. I never imagined I'd be driving to the courthouse with Karen sitting in the passenger seat, quiet as a folded newspaper. The irony was enough to make the whole truck feel off balance. 2 weeks earlier, she was screaming across my field, calling my wheat a nuisance. Now she was my witness. The world is strange like that. When we pulled into the lot, Karen adjusted her blouse and inhaled sharply. David, I'm not ready for this. Yes, you are, I said. We're not walking in as enemies. She looked surprised, almost touched. Her fingers twisted nervously. I stepped out of the truck and she followed, glancing around like the whole building might collapse on her. And honestly, for the man we were coming to face, I almost wished it would. Inside the courtroom, every seat was filled. Word had spread fast. The fire, the investigation, the suspect, the county's golden contractor, the same man who had offered to buy out my land every year like it was an old tractor. He sat at the defendant table, smug, polished, wearing a suit too expensive for his morals. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, the smirk vanished so violently it looked physically painful. Judge Robinson, he spat. Why the hell are you here? I walked toward the witness stand instead of the judge's bench. His face twisted in confusion. You're not presiding over this? You're testifying? Yes, I said calmly. Then I pointed at him. And I'm testifying against you. The courtroom erupted. His lawyer shot up. This is highly irregular. So is burning 40 acres of private farmland. The prosecutor interrupted. Sit down. Karen stepped forward then, shoulders stiff but chin high. The contractor scoffed loudly. Oh look, the HOA arsonist is here too. What? Did you two rehearse this? Karen didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eyes. I may have been reckless, she said steadily. But I didn't burn his field. You did. Gasps. Whispers. A few cameras clicked. She continued. You've been threatening that land for years, trying to buy it for pennies. And when that didn't work, you torched it so the county could reclassify it as damaged non-productive property, which means you could apply for industrial rezoning. He opened his mouth to shout something, but the prosecutor slammed a folder down. Your signature, he said, on the rezoning request, filed 3 days after the fire. The contractor froze. I stepped forward. You told me last winter, I said, that fields burn all the time. You laughed, said fire was the fastest way to clear land. I paused. And yet, you're the first man at the fire not holding a hose. The prosecutor handed me a long metal fragment, the same one investigators had found. This piece of machinery, the prosecutor said loudly to the court, came from a brush-clearing tractor belonging to the defendant's company. The contractor jumped to his feet. That doesn't prove anything. Satellites glitch. The wind shifts. That woman burns everything. Karen stiffened, but I raised a hand. No, I said. You did this. For the first time since the fire, my voice trembled. Not with fear, but with stored, heavy truth. You cost me my harvest. You cost me $100,000. You cost me months of work. But you made one mistake. He glared. And what's that? You thought the feud between me and Karen would cover your tracks. The room exploded again. Gasps, murmurs, whispers spreading like flames. The judge hammered the gavel. Order. The trial pivoted hard from that moment. Evidence was laid out like a battlefield. Satellite data, heat signatures, tool fragments, text messages, rezoning requests, witness statements. Every piece pointed to the same truth. He wanted my field. He wanted it burned. He wanted to blame the fire on chaos. But chaos doesn't lie. People do. And Karen, of all people, became the unexpected key that unlocked the entire case. When the final recess ended, the judge returned with the verdict. We find the defendant guilty on all counts. Karen exhaled so hard she nearly collapsed. I didn't move, because when justice lands, it doesn't celebrate. It settles. It roots itself like new seed in open soil. After the sentencing, Karen approached me in the hallway. David. Her voice was soft. I'm sorry. For everything. For the roses. The threats. The yelling. All of it. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the same woman who had watered her roses while my field burned. Karen, I said, you can't undo what you did. She nodded slowly, eyes shining. But today, I added, you did the right thing. She blinked, stunned. And for the first time in months, I walked outside not feeling the weight of smoke, but the first hint of rain. A promise of a field that would grow again. When the smoke cleared, the truth stood brighter than the flames that tried to bury it. My field will grow again, justice was served, and the real culprit finally faced the consequences he tried to hide behind our feud. Sometimes the fire isn't the end. It's the beginning of clarity. Thank you for watching this journey with me. If you want more real storytelling and dramatic HOA justice, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.